So a lot of people from TikTok wanted me to make a video talking about my abuse history and how I got all of the knowledge that I have today, and I couldn't fit that all into 1 or even 10 TikToks, so I'm going to make a YouTube video about it. So I'm not going to be just stating traumatic things that have gone on in my life. I'm going to be giving a timeline of what led up to certain events to give more of a perspective. Anyways, I was born in Georgia, and my parents were together. They met online, and they would fight a lot all the time. When I was like age 7, it got really bad. They were getting physical a lot, and they decided to separate. How it usually goes is the mom gets the kids, things like that, so I went with my mom. That was a disaster from the beginning because my mom didn't really know what she was doing. She didn't really have a plan. She just wanted to take us and go to Canada, where she was from originally. We moved in with a guy that she met on the internet. She barely knew this man and decided to move in with him regardless. So I was 7, we left Georgia, we went to Canada. It was great. So my brother and I were in a completely different country, living with a man that we had never met in a small apartment. And he had a son, but the thing was, his son was he acted a little off. Not neurologically, or he wasn't disabled or anything like that. He was just scared all the time. And he showed a lot of signs of abuse. I'm not going to say that he was abused because I don't know for sure. I didn't see anything like that. But he was startled very easily. He was scared of his father. He was very well behaved. He clearly was running on anxiety. It seemed very obvious. He was scared of getting anything wrong, and he tried his best to impress his dad, to get any sort of validation from his father, and it was sad to see, but I didn't understand it at the time, so it was odd, but I didn't really think much of it at the time. I was 7. So maybe weeks after moving in with this man that we had never met, I was with my brother sitting in his son's room. We were watching TV, casual, and we heard a crash in the living room. So we went out to look to see what had happened, and the man in question was on the ground. He had hit his head on the table, it broke, and he was having a seizure. I saw this at 7 years old. My mom rushed us out of the apartment, and kind of went with her automatic backup plan, which was to go to a family friend's house. But she rushed us out. She's like, we have to leave right now. We have to leave. So we left, and we didn't know what was going on. And I don't really know what else happened after that. I don't know if she called the police. I don't know if she got someone to help his kid. But all I know is that we left in a rush. I found out later on that what had happened to cause this whole situation was he had made a move on my mom, and my mom rejected him, so he got very forceful with her. And my mom has a bad history of things like this happening to her, so she punched him in the head, in the temple specifically, and now because of this, today he has permanent hearing damage that was on the side that he got punched in. At this point, we moved into a family friend's house, and we didn't stay there for too long. So after this happened, we moved in with a family friend, and I don't really know what happened between the ages of 7 and 9. After that, I don't really know what happened. I have a big memory gap, but I'll just list off a few significant events that I do remember happening. I'll just give a rundown. So basically, we lived in an apartment, one that was falling apart. The floor was falling in on itself. The foundation was very bad, and it got to the point where the Red Cross had to come and rescue us from our house because it was so bad, and we were on the news about it. another apartment that we lived in, we didn't have proper heating in it. During the winter, we had to sleep in jackets. We had to tape garbage bags onto the windows as a way to avoid the air coming in because the windows weren't set up right. They weren't built properly. The Red Cross had to come and get us again because it was so bad. And I think we're on the news again. I'm not sure. We lived in an apartment that had a maggot infestation, and raccoons would come from underneath our sink and eat our food. We would wake up and the floors would be white, filled with maggots, and we would have to sweep them up and throw them into the toilet and flush them. It was a daily occurrence. We also stayed in an apartment at one point that we had a really not so good landlord. He kicked us out at one point while it was raining. We were sitting on our front porch crying, asking him to let us in back in our apartment. I think maybe we didn't pay rent or something like that. I don't know. All I remember is that it was cold. You're probably wondering, where's my dad in all of this? How is he doing? How's he holding up? He saw us about once a year. And my mom, she struggled with a lot of untreated mental illnesses. At one point, he came to visit us, and he was at the door, and my mom wasn't in a good mood, so she told him to leave and come back the next year. At this time, we were so young that my brother and I looked to our moms for all of the answers. We looked to her as the person with all of the right answers where we could get all our information from, and she fed us lies about our father all the time. She told us that he didn't care about us, that he didn't care that we were going hungry, he didn't care that we were in a bad neighborhood, he didn't care that we were struggling financially, that we were in a bad apartment that was falling apart constantly, all the time, every apartment. And that, of course, turned out to be a lie. It wasn't true. I found out later on that he was sending money the entire time, and that he was trying his best. And my mom just wouldn't tell him anything about what was going on. She would just ask him for money, and that's it. She wouldn't tell him about us at all. Ignored his phone calls, things like that. And she would spend the money that he would send on useless things. She was very reckless with money and would spend it on weed or just other useless things. Found that out a lot later on. So for many years I resented my dad throughout these years. She would even have us send pictures of written words to him saying, "I'm mad at you," or "I hate you," or things like that, as a way to manipulate my dad into sending more money, because she would tell us that, oh, he's getting all this money and he's just not sending it because he doesn't care, when really he was working all the time and doing his best to send as much money as possible. He was doing all that he could. And when he would send money, she would have us write, "Oh, I love you," and send it to him. It was awful, but that's not even the worst of it. It got a lot worse when we moved into an apartment in Montreal where we were surrounded by gang members, and my mom got close with them. They were always in our house, they were always around us, and she very much well informed us that they were like in gangs, and she, I don't know, thought it was cool when they've like literally killed people, and she ended up dating one of them. I told my friends a story all the time about how one of them was in our house at one point, and I was just going to get something to drink from the kitchen, and they were sitting there on the kitchen table. He told me to come here, and like he showed me this handshake, and he was like, "Oh, you're one of us now," and I freaked out. I was like, no I'm not. Nope. But while all this was going on, they were bringing drugs into our house, and at one point I think they wanted to bring guns, and that's where my mom drew the line. Like, the police would come to our house and be like, oh, do you know, like, where this person is? And do you know this person? And my mom would be like, no, while they're, like, smoking in our house. But at one point, she dated one of the gang members. At first, it was fine. I guess as fine as it could be. She was forced to get a tattoo of his name on her body, as all of the girlfriends who dated them were supposed to do. At one point, he started becoming abusive, very slowly, especially after she got pregnant with his kids. They were twins. She was pregnant with 2 kids. At one point, it got so bad to where my brother and I came home from school. At this point, we were like 13, 14, maybe younger than that, probably younger than that. We came home from school one day, though, and it looked like a tornado had gone through our apartment. Everything was broken. Every step that I took, there was something that was broken, a wall that was punched in, something that was destroyed. I think our oven had dents in it, tables were broken. My mom had told me after that he had thrown her down a flight of stairs in our apartment and broke a door off on her head, and that's why the door was broken in our bathroom, in our downstairs bathroom. So we packed as much as we could and we left. And since at this point we were living in Montreal, we moved to Ottawa. Up to this point, my mom wasn't really the problem. She was kind of abusive, but it was pretty standard. No, abuse is like okay, but it's pretty standard to what a lot of adults would define as just punishment, discipline, hitting us occasionally, things like that. She wasn't very degrading or anything. We moved to Ottawa, and that's when she got worse. Before that, though, we were on low-income housing, obviously. From the examples of apartments that I've given, we were clearly on low-income housing. So we had to stay in a hotel until low-income housing supported us staying in a hotel until we could get an apartment that was suitable for us for low-income housing. And we decided that we were going to hop hotels as a way to avoid my mother's abusive ex finding us. Spoiler alert, that didn't work. We stayed in multiple hotels, though. We stayed in really, really bad ones. I got electrocuted at one of them. I don't even know how I did. I leaned my back against the wall and then I got electrocuted and couldn't feel my arm for like half an hour. We stayed in this one really nice one where we got free breakfast, and it was so sad. It's so embarrassing to talk about, but there was a free breakfast that we got every day because it was that good. We would go downstairs, we would all grab trays, and we would fill it as much as possible, go upstairs and live off of that. And when we couldn't, there was a cookie jar that was for the people who were coming in, and we would take all of those. We would take all of them and give them to my brothers, because at this point I had 2. A little brother who was probably 3 at the time, and then an older brother. Yeah. We lived off of breakfast food for weeks, and then we had to go to another hotel that was very trashy, and that's when he found us. When he found us, we kind of panicked and went into sort of a survival mode. We were really nice to him. We tried to be as nice as possible, talking to him, not addressing the fact that he had just found us out of nowhere when we were hiding. He got mad at my mom for some reason, and my mom microwaved water to make instant coffee with, because there's a little microwave in our hotel room, and he dumped that on her and burned her with it, choked her, yelled at me, and trigger warning, raped her. and we kind of had to sit through it because my mom wouldn't let us go and get help. And we waited and waited until she said, okay, you can go and get the police now, until she was in a chokehold. And we left and we got the police, and they checked her entire body, made sure the burns weren't too bad, and arrested him and sent him back to Quebec. After this, we went to a battered women's shelter. They were already very uncomfortable with us being there because my brother was, at the time, like 15, and these are all women that are there because men abuse them, but we had no other option, really. So they allowed us to be there. However, my mom broke a lot of rules. She turned on the TV when it wasn't supposed to be turned on. She grabbed food that wasn't hers. She made comments to a bunch of women that were there. Broke off the cover for the thermostat in the playroom and turned it up because she thought that it was too cold in there, and we got kicked out around Christmas. They had literally made Christmas dinner the night before. It was on Christmas Eve, and we had to leave. I think we stayed in another hotel, then we finally got an apartment. And at this point you think things would get so much better, but they just got worse. Instead of situational, it was more psychological, because my mom was very mentally ill, and she had just gone through all of these things, and she hadn't gotten any sort of treatment. I'm not justifying it at all, but that's what the situation was. So at this point she was very pregnant. So at this point my dad moved closer to the border so he could see us, my brother and I, more. And my mom made him come down and stay with us while she was in the hospital giving birth. Reasonable. But then he had to stay for months afterwards. After she gave birth, I believe she went through postpartum, or something happened and her illnesses just got so much worse because she lost motivation to do anything. And by anything, I mean raise her own kids. It began the cycle of her making my older brother and I babysit my brothers all the time, which is, you know, for the most part normal, but she would also make us clean everything all the time, and she wouldn't do anything, and it got to the point where I missed school, where I had to stay up late, and I got the worst of it for some reason. To this day, I don't know why, but it got to the point where I either missed a lot of school or I was very late to school because I had to stay up 4 hours babysitting or cleaning, and my mom wouldn't let me sleep. Sometimes she wouldn't let me eat and would threaten me if I didn't do what she wanted me to. So of course I did it. I would go to school and I would be really tired and I would fall asleep in class. And because of this, I was bullied a lot for my intelligence. I was called stupid and lazy, and that I didn't care about my grades. I didn't care about anything that was going on in school, obviously because I was falling asleep in class. And then I started missing a lot of school because I slowly stopped caring, because of after months and over a year of being told that you're not doing well in school and you're not trying, I didn't want to go anymore. It got to the point where I was refused tests. The teacher wouldn't give me tests. She would look at me and say, "You're not going to do them anyways. You're not going to write anything anyways," because I would fall asleep instead. And I slowly developed a complex with my intelligence because of how I was treated in school. And I was treated like that at home too. My mom would see my grades because of everything, and she would take it out on me, even though she didn't consider the situations that she was putting me in at all. And it sucked. It was really hard. So I just stopped going to school for like a year. I fell into a deep depression because of this. My life became centered around my brothers. My life became centered around making sure they were okay and cleaning. I would ask to stay home, and my mom didn't care about my education really, so she would say, yeah, as long as you clean, as long as you watch the kids while I sleep. And she would sleep a lot. This is when she became really abusive. I think her bipolar disorder really went crazy. Anything I did wrong, she would threaten me. Anytime I cleaned something wrong or did something wrong, it got to where I wasn't allowed to go in my room because I needed to be doing something. I needed to be babysitting my brothers or cleaning. And you're probably thinking, wow, why do you need to clean so much? It's probably not that dirty. When there's three little kids in the house, it gets dirty really easily, especially when no one picks up after themselves, including my mother. So it got dirty really fast, and it was kind of like living in an episode of Hoarders, and my mental health declined because I wasn't allowed to go to school. So obviously I wasn't allowed to hang out with people. I wasn't allowed to leave the house, be social, anything like that. So because I missed a lot of school during this time, CPS got involved, or CAS, social workers got involved, and they would talk to me at school. And social workers had been in our lives for a while because of our financial situations and things like that. My mom, she had been in the hands of social workers before when she was younger. She had been in foster homes, in group homes. She had had terrible experiences with those families, and she put it on us, and she convinced us that the only thing that they're trying to do is take us away, and tried her best to convince us that if we said anything, if we said the wrong thing, if we didn't make it seem like everything was perfect, we would be taken away and we would be in a horrible home. And I was scared. I didn't know what to expect if I left, so I was familiar with the situation that was at home, and I didn't want to be separated from my brothers because obviously I got really close with them, so I didn't want to do anything about that. So I never said anything. They couldn't get anything out of me. They would talk to me all the time during school, and I wouldn't tell them anything. I couldn't. I was too scared. I would say that I was sick. That's why I didn't come to school. I would say that I had really bad period cramps, or that I had an appointment, and my mom would go along with these lies because she wanted me to stay home as well. And at one point, I had shown up to school for a full week, and my teacher made the class clap for me, and it was so humiliating. And I just stopped going after that. After that, I fell into a deeper depression during the summer because I had no school. I had no escape from my household. Even though it was so bad and I was bullied, it still helped. After that, I stopped showering. I stopped brushing my hair. I was eating nothing but junk food, and I gained some weight. And my mom started calling me fat a lot. She had before, but she was really cracking down on me now. And she called me dirty. She projected her insecurities onto me because she had her own body issues. She suffered from an eating disorder for a lot of her life, and she put that on me, and she took it out on me, and then I started hating myself because I was already struggling to shower. I was already struggling to brush my hair. So, and my mom only really bought junk food. So, I just stopped eating. And this was something that I fixated on as a way to avoid what was going on in my home because it was so bad. That's where I think I developed body dysmorphia. I got my first Apple product and I was really excited about it, but it really hit me that something was wrong because my friend told me to download Snapchat, so I did, and when I opened it, I saw my face and I deleted it. I deleted it because I couldn't handle looking at myself. I wanted to die during that time because I would look at myself and I would analyze myself, and I would think about how I didn't have good grades. I wasn't attractive. And I wasn't a good person, according to my mom. So what worth did I have? I wondered, what's the point then? So, with this self-hatred and developing body dysmorphia, I decided to fixate on my developing eating disorder. And I became vegetarian, and I wanted to eat healthier. And my mom refused to do that, so I just didn't eat. We didn't have food at all. So it wasn't that hard to do that. But it bothered me because my brothers went without, so what I started doing was stealing money from my mom because she was very reckless with how she spent her money. She spent a lot on cigarettes, on coffee, on weed, and would buy little to nothing else. I started stealing change from her, slowly accumulating it over time, and when she would buy groceries, I would take a few and save it in my room. When she would buy groceries, I would take a few things and save it in my room for when we didn't have anything left, and because it would go really quickly, and I would give it to my brothers. I would get money from my mom. My mom would tell me to go to the store. I would keep the change. I would take change from off the table if she left any. Things like that. And I used this money to feed myself because the things that she would buy didn't really fit with my disordered eating. So I would buy a bag of carrots and walk to school with it and eat half of it. Things like that. During this time, I didn't know I had any sort of mental illness because self-diagnosing is very frowned upon, and I wasn't given access to any sort of health care. Even though in Canada it's free, my mom just didn't take the time to do things like that. I didn't go to the dentist for the 10 years that I lived with her, even. During this time, I didn't feel right self-diagnosing because of the stigma that's around it, and the stigma that's around teenagers in general, and attention-seeking behaviors and things like that. So I struggled a lot, and I didn't know what was wrong with me at all. I would have anxiety attacks, and I didn't know what they were. I would have depressive episodes and didn't know what they were. I would look in the mirror and cry, and I didn't know why. I had no idea. And it sucked because I didn't want to self-diagnose. I didn't know what was wrong with me. I didn't know what caused it. And I didn't believe anything caused it because I didn't believe I had any mental illness. So that kind of contributed to me denying that I was even being abused in the first place, even though I saw it happen all the time, even with my brothers. As soon as they got old enough to walk and talk and just get curious, my mom started hitting them. At one point, one of my brothers were running around. I can't remember what he did, but my mom grabbed him by his hair, pulled him, and sat him down in a chair, and chunks of his hair fell onto his chest, and he cried. And another time, my mom, because my brother woke up in a full diaper, he took it off, and it got everywhere, and my mom got mad and put him in a cold shower, and I had to hear him scream the entire time. And when she brought him downstairs in a towel, he hid his face and he was shaking and was trying hard to breathe from crying so hard. So it wasn't just me that she was abusive towards. It was also my brothers, including my older brother. He didn't really care for my mom at a certain point. He grew resentful and angry towards her and didn't really take anything that she was throwing at him, so she would go harder. For example, my mom slapped him and he didn't give any sort of response to it, and she wanted that, so she hit him again and again, and she kept hitting him until tears were running down his face and his entire face was red. And she did that all the time to us. She would slap me and then slap me again until I hit my head on the wall. She would slap me and I'd fall on the ground. Anything she could to get power over us. She wanted that. And I don't know why. I still don't. So with my mental health rapidly declining, in the middle of it, I had an epiphany that I could ignore all that was going on at home, go to school as much as possible, work really hard, and get a good education, and try my best to get out and feel some sort of self-worth, because I didn't have anything else. I didn't have anything else going for me, so if I was hardworking, I could get something out of that. So I started going to school more. I started focusing on schoolwork, but my mom made it really hard for me to do that. I would be punished when I tried to do my schoolwork. I would come home and immediately say, I can't do chores right now. I need to get my schoolwork done. I need to focus on this. And she would get mad at me. She would threaten me whenever I tried doing my schoolwork, so I wasn't allowed to. And that caused a lot of problems for the future. I'm a lot better now, but for a while I couldn't do my schoolwork without having an anxiety attack because I felt that I was going to get hurt or something bad was going to happen if I tried doing it. But I kept trying. I kept doing my schoolwork. I told my teachers about my situation, and one of them told me that I could stay after school. And she would call my mom and say that I need to catch up on schoolwork, and my mom would be okay with that. So I would stay and try to catch up on all my schoolwork as much as possible. And I was doing really well, and I thought it was going really good, until finals came up and I had to study for those. And because I I didn't clean the kitchen the way that she wanted me to. She turned off the Wi-Fi and wouldn't let me study, and then she kept me home from school, and I had no other way of studying that weekend right before. And I don't know why, to some people might not seem like a huge deal. Like, you could still try doing it and seeing how it goes regardless, but to me, it showed that my mom would do everything in her power to make sure I didn't succeed. I felt like that was it. That's all my life was gonna be, was her kind of restricting me as much as possible. And I was done with it. So when my mom sent me to the store, I brought some of the money that I had saved up from taking it from her, and I bought a rope, and I was planning on hanging myself, and I talked to one of my friends about it, and he convinced me not to, at least for that night. He wanted to see me at least one more time, and I didn't do it. I went to school, and I felt like I was living in a dream, like a bubble. It was really weird. I was there, but I felt like no one could see me. I was very catatonic. I had went to my guidance counselor, who was trained in mental health, and I told her about what was going on, and she sent me to the hospital, of course. She didn't trust me to leave her office and be okay, be safe. So she took me to the hospital, which she didn't have to do, but she did because she cared about me. And I went with another counselor who also was close with me. And they called my mom, unfortunately, and told her what had happened. And she rushed to the hospital, and we were in the waiting room. She came in and she screamed at me in front of everyone else that was in the waiting room, saying, "You bought a rope?" Very, very angry with me, and the counselor sort of stopped her and said, "You need to sit down, like, you need to calm down, because it's not the reaction that she needs." And when I went to my room waiting for the doctor to come in, my counselors followed me and went with me, and so did my mom, and they were waiting with me. My counselor stood up and they asked me, "Are you okay if we leave?" And I said yes. They asked me if I felt safe, and I said yes. And then they asked me, "Are you lying?" And I said yes. So then they stayed. And then my dad came because my mom had told my dad, and he rushed to the hospital all the way from the United States, and he got my mom a taxi to go home because I didn't feel comfortable having her there because she was mad at me. And my dad stayed. I couldn't handle it anymore. I told everyone that talked to me about what was going on at home. After so long of not knowing if it was abuse or not, if it was unstable or not, and I wanted to know because I was talking to professionals for once, and they were so shocked. I didn't expect the reaction that I got from them. I went to a crisis unit, not a psych ward. It's very, very temporary. You only stay there for at most a week. It's sort of like a band-aid that they put on, and they try to sort everything out from the outside while keeping you safe. So when I was sent there, my mom and my dad had to fill out a bunch of paperwork. They had to talk to them about why I was there. And the staff there immediately felt very uncomfortable with having my mom there because she made everything sort of about her and talked about what she had been through and her issues. And they kept having to bring her back to me and say that this was about me and that I was having issues, that I wasn't okay, and she wouldn't listen. And they clearly saw that she wasn't fitting for me, I guess, and set up times where we would all sit down at this big table and have a discussion about what I'm gonna do when I leave the crisis unit. The big question was if I was gonna go live with my mom, which I wasn't legally allowed to, but my mom really wanted to hear it from me that I didn't want to live there anymore. The staff there told me that. So in the beginning of the discussion, the people that were there were a few staff members, my dad, my mom, and social workers that were writing down everything my mom was saying. And they were having a blast. They were very much ASMR typing everything down that my mom was saying, because she was saying a lot of very not good things. She was saying that everyone was making her out to be the victim and she didn't know what was going on, and that I was doing it did everything for attention, and there's no reason why I should be there. Again, they were having a blast typing it all down. While she was saying all that, I had been informed right before the discussion that I was going to have to tell her that I don't want to live with her because she's hearing it from everyone else but not me, so she doesn't believe it. So I told her that in the middle of her talking because I just didn't want to hear her talk anymore. And she immediately got mad at me, yelled and got up and left. My dad started crying, and he just told me that I'll always have him, and then he left to go take my mom home because she can't drive. I had a breakdown after that. I was not doing well, because even after everything that my mom put me through, I was hoping that she'd care about my well-being even a little bit, but she just clearly felt insulted by everything that I did and didn't really care about my well-being. So I was given the option to either move in with my dad or go into foster care. And I kind of wanted to go into foster care, and I brought up the idea of going there until I could graduate, because I really wanted to finish in the high school that I was in, because I had moved around so much my entire life. I just wanted to stay in one school, and it was in the middle of the year during finals, and I didn't know how that would work. And my dad was like, no. My dad was like, no, you're not doing that. We are not having another issue. So I moved with my dad, and I moved to the United States. So I moved to the United States, and I really assumed it would get better, but it didn't. I'm going to be completely honest. When you experience trauma and you escape it, it gets a lot worse. Especially when it's like psychological. Anyways, while I was there, I stayed in a small 1-bedroom apartment with my dad because that's how he was living, and He gave me his bedroom and slept on the couch. And my teachers were very understanding of my situation. They had already known about everything that was going on with me, and they wanted to do their best to help, so they made my finals really easy for me. I had to do a final project instead of an exam, and that's really, I loved that I could do that. But remember when I said that I wasn't allowed to do schoolwork and it caused a lot of problems? That's kind of where it took me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it at all because of everything that my school had put me through, because of everything that my mom had put me through, all the things that they said to me. I felt really incapable, and I was really, I don't know, I would have breakdowns about doing my schoolwork. I don't know why. Well, I do, but I was so scared of messing up and something bad happening to me because I did. Because it's how I lived for so long. I couldn't do it, so I ended up having to repeat the school year because it took me weeks to do one slideshow. It took me like a month, and I cried every day while doing it, and I dreaded it every day. During that time, I really regretted not following through with my suicide attempt. I wasn't okay. I thought about dying all the time, every day. I wrote a huge letter, and I posted it on like social media, my private like Instagram, and it was basically me saying that after everything that I had been through, I felt that, and it basically said that I felt like I was defective. I wasn't really capable of having a good future, and I hated myself so much that I didn't feel I was good at anything or worthy of anything. I felt so insecure. I hated myself so much that it clouded my ability to see my future. And it made me think of how I'm not really good at anything because I was so far behind in school, and I wasn't given time to even develop a personality fully, so I didn't know what to do with myself. I felt like I had so much potential, and it was thrown away. I felt like I was a waste of something that could have been good, and that no amount of therapy could fix that. When my dad started noticing that I wasn't doing well, he wouldn't let me stay home by myself, and he worked at a pizza store, and he delivered pizza, so he would drive me around until like 3 a.m. Because he didn't trust me being home by myself, which was good, because I didn't either. Because every morning, we lived in like an apartment building, and we lived in the top floor. You know where this is going. Every day I would check to see if the door was unlocked to the roof. It never was, but I always checked, and that's all I thought about. I would put the seat back whenever my dad was driving me around. I would just cry. I wouldn't do anything else. During this time, at one point, my dad got a phone call, and it was for me, and it was my mom. And she told me that it was all my fault, and I'm the reason that it happened. And then she told me that my brothers had been taken away from her by CAS. I didn't want that to happen. It bothered me so much because I didn't know if they were okay, even though I knew that I don't know. It's so hard to explain. I can't. I don't know why I would rather have them living with my mom rather than rolling the dice and possibly getting a good home and foster care. I don't know why, but I just didn't want them to go into foster care. I didn't want them to be separated. I wanted to know what was happening to them, even if it was bad. But it happened. I felt so bad. After a while, I was able to visit them. I would visit them once a month, once every other month, and I did this for a bit, and I planned on seeing them as much as possible. But it became increasingly hard to, because I went from raising them calling me mom, doing everything for them, playing with them all the time, teaching them new things, to never seeing them. And when I did, it was in one room for 30 minutes, and they would cry every time I left. It was so hard because I was there for everything. I missed school for them. Because when I was there with them, I knew what was happening to them. I knew what was going on. It was very limited because I was the one babysitting them, not her, not my mom. But now they were learning things without me. They were doing different things without me. They were getting haircuts. They were learning new words. They were finding new interests. And it bothered me so much. And one of them was put on medication. And I don't know what it was. I think it was ADHD medication. But it made him so sad. He didn't eat. He was losing a ton of weight. He wouldn't talk. He would get sad so easily. He seemed confused. He wasn't as energized as he usually was. And it hurt the most. Leaving him, I couldn't see them anymore. It hurt me too much. I don't think I've seen them in 3 years, maybe less than that. I haven't seen them, I don't think, in 2 years, because it hurt so much. What hurt the most about not being able to see them, not bringing myself to see them, was the fact that it was my choice. It was my choice to do that. They're at the age where they could barely retain long-term memory. I know because I Googled it, and finding out that they could possibly forget who I was. But yeah, after that I went to a psych ward, and if you want to hear more about what happened afterwards, let me know. I'll be happy to talk about it. Bye.